Hello and welcome to another episode of Explaining a Character from an Edgy 2000s video game that's old enough to have a drinking problem. I'm your host Des. Last time we talked about Preacher and his unholy warpath to salvation. So if you haven't checked that video out, please do, and make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more content like this, because that is the way to encourage me to do more of it. Today is all about Grimm, so without further ado, let's do further with me, driver of Mr. Grimm. A motorcycle with a sidecar full of instruments of destruction where a person should be, and a skull mounted on the handlebars. Mr. Grimm the bike shares many features with its pilot, as Mr. Grimm the man is himself a man shackled with a metaphorical sidecar and a skull to carry on the memory of who should have been sitting in it. Mr. Grimm is not the collector of souls as he was in previous Twisted Metal games, but he's crazy enough to bring a motorcycle to a car fight. Mr. Grimm took the armored bike from his commander after seeing them getting ripped to shreds by friendly fire. Upon that motorcycle, Mr. Grimm arms himself with a powerful scythe that was once used to harvest the fields of Vietnam, but is now a tool in the trade of kicking ass. Mr. Grimm is as glass as cannons come, with a high degree of speed and power with his special, but a distinct lack of armor to protect himself in the thick of a battle. Mr. Grimm is really only for the hardest of the hardcore gamers. Mr. Grimm's patient profile in the Blackfield Asylum reads, very dangerous, info, male, age 51, disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder with cannibalistic tendencies. Treatment is psychotropic meds, a vegetarian diet, and to avoid eye contact with him. Mr. Grimm's story begins in 1971. Just 18 years old, him and his best friend Benny were shipped off to fight in the Vietnam War. Their army was outnumbered, outclassed, and unprepared. Platoon after platoon fought the enemy bravely but quickly fell. The horrors of each battle tortured the survivors. The screams from nightmares could be heard in the trenches each night. Mr. Grimm and Benny saw their comrades fall 10 at a time. They knew that their time would come too, so they swore to always watch each other's back. It was during one battle that Benny was shot and gravely wounded. Mr. Grimm stopped to treat him, giving a Vietnamese soldier the chance to capture the duo. Mr. Grimm and Benny were taken to the Vietnamese base and placed at the bottom of a 25-foot hole to be held as prisoners of war. The Vietnamese military advisor at the base had a special way of torturing those he captured: starvation. For several days, the wounded Benny and Grimm sat down there with nothing to eat, until one day the military advisor had dropped a knife into the hole, telling Mr. Grimm that he could eat whatever he finds in the hole, implying that he should kill and eat his best friend Benny. Mr. Grimm understood what the advisor wanted him to do, but wouldn't give him the satisfaction at first. With his wounds untreated, Benny died just a few days later. Desperate, Mr. Grimm began to eat Benny. Afterwards, he sews the skull of his deceased friend into a helmet that he refuses to remove, and will become violent towards anyone who tries to force him to. Just a couple weeks later, the US military arrived to rescue Mr. Grimm. When they tried to take his skull helmet off, he killed 4 people before they brought him down. After that, they took Mr. Grimm back to the US and put him in Blackfield Asylum with the rest of the contestants. Until one day, when Calypso visits, giving him the chance to fulfill any wish he desires, as long as he wins the tournament. He agrees. His wish? To get revenge on the Vietnamese military advisor who turned him into a monster and allowed his best friend to die. Mr. Grimm has a line in his story that serves as the de facto slogan statement for the game. Quote, "They say the mind twists and bends to deal with the horrors of life, but sometimes the mind bends so much it snaps in two." It even appears on the rear cover of the game's box. The loading screen dialogue for Mr. Grimm reads in this order: "When I win this contest, I'll have my revenge. What he did to me, to my friend, it ripped my mind apart. My killing instinct, it's coming back to me now. Just like in the war, I'd forgotten how good I am at this. I have to stay focused on the fight, but every dead body I see brings back the cravings. Have I gone insane? Minion won last year's contest, but I'm not afraid. If I can just find a way past his force field, I can beat him. God, Benny, I'm so sorry. I should have never done what I did. I wish I had died too. This arena is like the jungle, close quarters. You move in and out quick before the enemy knows what hit him. Will the man who destroyed my mind even recognize me after all this time? I hope he does. I hope he's terrified. I'm too close. I won't give up. Once I kill this bastard, nothing will stand in my way." End quote. The way I see it, evil is a disease in the Twisted Metal Black universe, passing through the streets of Midtown like a plague. It's this parasitic rot that spreads not from a cough or sneeze, but the dark tendrils of hate and violence and greed, reaching out and corrupting whatever good it touches. The dark disease of evil passes from host to host, making monsters out of everyone. Every character in this game is either a victim of evil or the embodiment of it. Mr. Grimm is no exception, just a kid out of high school, told he must fight a ridiculous war, and finds himself at the hands of unforgivable evil. Given no other choice, he chooses to let that evil infect him in order to survive. But he didn't really survive, did he? His flesh remains, but his mind, bending and twisting, thrashing and gnawing at every horror of life that was thrown at it, had perished in that hole alongside his best friend Benny. Whatever came out of that hole is no longer man as we understand, but a man-shaped vessel that evil has hollowed out and made its own, another host for the dark disease whose only desire is to spread itself further and wider. When Mr. Grimm wins the contest, he does not choose to bring his best friend back, but rather seeks vengeance on the person responsible for his suffering. This may be a common theme among survivors of trauma, who often find themselves fixated on the person or people who caused them harm, rather than on the harm itself. In Mr. Grimm's case, his desire for revenge is not simply a desire for justice, but rather a deeply ingrained need to reclaim his own sense of agency and power in a world that has taken so much from him. At the same time, Mr. Grimm's decision to not bring his best friend back also speaks to maybe a sense of guilt and shame that survivors of trauma often feel. Despite his best efforts to resist, Mr. Grimm was forced to commit one of the darkest acts he could possibly imagine, and it's haunted him ever since. The idea of undoing that act, of bringing his friend back to life, may feel like an impossible task, and one that he may not feel like he deserves. Mr. Grimm just wants revenge, not his best friend back. And revenge he gets when he wins the tournament. Calypso provides him with a dinner for one, the Vietnamese military advisor. Mr. Grimm says, as much as he doesn't like to admit, he's developed a special craving. The evil has come full circle and completely overcome Mr. Grimm, leading him to killing and eating the man who gave him that disease of evil. Eliminating the source doesn't stop the spread. It's just another link in the chains that oppress the world of Twisted Metal Black. So within the context of the game taking place within the mind of Needles Kane, or Sweet Tooth, it wouldn't be too much of a stretch to try to assign different aspects of his psyche or personality to the different characters of Twisted Metal Black. So if I had to interpret some way that Mr. Grimm would be placed inside the mind of Sweet Tooth, I would think maybe Grimm could represent Sweet Tooth's version of the Grim Reaper, where in Twisted Metal 2 and Head On, the Grim Reaper is depicted as a supernatural entity addicted to devouring souls. But Black puts that fiendish appetite in the form of a human, because Sweet Tooth could be trying to show us that man and monster are indistinguishable, and to paint evil as supernatural is just a story we tell to comfort ourselves. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video of me taking a little dive into the character of Mr. Grimm from Twisted Metal Black. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment your thoughts and opinions on this video or any characters you want me to do later. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you for watching.